was early in the morning when I left my apartment. The air was cool and fresh, and the city was just waking up. The streets were quiet, except for the soft sound of cars and the distant song of birds. The light was golden and gentle, falling through the trees like thin ribbons. I had some time before work, so I decided to stop at the small cafe around the corner, the one I liked so much. The cafe was not big, but it always felt warm and peaceful. As I opened the door, a little bell rang above my head. The smell of coffee and fresh pastries wrapped around me immediately. It was the kind of smell that made you want to smile and take a deep breath. Inside, the air was full of quiet music, a soft piano melody that played somewhere in the background. There were only a few people inside. A man in a suit was sitting near the window reading a newspaper. Two students were talking quietly in the corner, their laptops open in front of them. And behind the counter, the barista was smiling, preparing a cup of cappuccino. The light came through the big window, touching the tables, the cups, and the faces of the people inside. It was a soft, sleepy light, the kind that makes everything look calm and beautiful. I walked to the counter and looked at the menu, even though I already knew what I wanted. A simple cup of latte and a small croissant, my usual breakfast on days when I stopped here. The barista recognized me and smiled. "Good morning." I smiled back and gave my order. His hands moved quickly and carefully as he made the coffee. There was something almost artistic in the way he worked, measuring, steaming, pouring, creating a small world of taste and warmth. When he handed me the cup, the foam on top was perfect, with a small heart drawn in milk. I thanked him and found a seat near the window. The table was small, but it had everything I needed. A place for my cup, my croissant, and a little notebook that I always carried with me. I sat down and looked outside. The city was waking up. People were walking quickly along the street, some with coffee cups in their hands, some talking on the phone, some with sleepy faces and heavy bags. A woman was walking her dog, a little white one that stopped every few steps to sniff the ground. A bus passed by, its windows foggy from the cold morning air. Everything moved, but slowly, peacefully. I took a sip of coffee. It was hot and smooth, with a light bitterness and a touch of sweetness from the milk. It felt like a small comfort, like a gentle hug from the inside. The croissant was soft and buttery, with little flakes that fell on the plate. I broke a piece, dipped it into the coffee, and smiled. Simple things can make a morning perfect, I thought. The piano music in the background continued to play. It mixed with the quiet sounds of spoons, cups, and soft conversations. The air was warm, and the world outside felt far away in that small moment. Everything was peaceful. I opened my notebook and started to write a few lines, not work notes, just thoughts. I wrote about the light, about the smell of coffee, about the way mornings make me feel. There was something special about this time of day, a quiet promise that anything could happen. A new day always feels like a small new life, full of chances and stories. As I wrote, I looked at the barista again. He was talking to a customer, laughing softly. His movements were quick and sure, but there was calmness in them too, as if he had already found the rhythm of his day. At another table, two women were laughing quietly. They were probably friends who met before work. One of them wore a red scarf that looked so bright against the soft morning colors. I liked how every person in this cafe had their own little story, their own small morning world. Maybe that was what I loved most about this place, that it felt alive, full of real people and small moments of happiness. I looked down at my notebook again and kept writing. The rain from last night had left the streets clean and shiny. Outside, a child was walking with his mother, jumping over puddles and laughing. The sound of his laughter came through the open door for a second, and it made everyone in the cafe smile. It was strange how small things could change the feeling of a room. After a while, I stopped writing and just sat quietly. The coffee was almost finished, and only a few crumbs of croissant were left. The morning had become a little busier. More people came in. More cups were made, more voices filled the air. But still the cafe kept its calm, cozy spirit. I loved that balance, the energy of the city mixing with the softness of this little place. I thought about my day ahead, about work, emails, and meetings, but it didn't feel heavy. The cafe gave me a kind of calm strength, as if I could carry a piece of this peace with me through the whole day. Sometimes all we need is a quiet start, a cup of coffee, a soft melody, and a few minutes to breathe. As I sat there, I noticed the way the sunlight slowly moved across the table. At first it was soft and pale, but now it became warmer, more golden. It touched my hands, my cup, and the little notebook. Dust sparkled in the light, floating slowly in the air like tiny stars. It was such a small, simple scene, yet it felt beautiful. Maybe that was why I loved mornings. They made the ordinary things shine. I leaned back in my chair and listened again. The music had changed. Now it was a quiet guitar melody. I could hear the sound of the coffee machine, the milk frothing, the cups clinking. It all came together like a calm song. I didn't want to leave just yet. My phone buzzed on the table, a new message from work. For a moment, I thought about checking it, but then I decided not to. The office could wait. There was something rare about mornings like this. They disappeared too quickly if you didn't hold on to them. Outside, the street had become livelier. People were walking faster now. The baker from the shop next door was putting trays of fresh bread in the window. A delivery truck stopped for a moment, and a man carried boxes inside. I watched it all with a kind of quiet joy. Everything was moving, but I didn't feel rushed. It was nice to be still while the world kept spinning. I took the last sip of my coffee and smiled at the taste. Still warm, still rich. The barista looked up and smiled back. It was a small exchange, just a moment, but it felt kind. In big cities, these tiny gestures often mean more than words. I opened my bag, put the notebook inside, and stood up. Before leaving, I took one last look around. The cafe was now full, people waiting for their coffee, some reading, some talking softly. There was a young woman drawing in her sketchbook near the window, her pencil moving fast across the paper. She looked completely lost in her thoughts, and I liked that, how everyone here had their own little story happening at the same time. I walked toward the door and pushed it open. The bell above my head rang again, that same sweet sound. Outside, the city greeted me with cool air and sunlight. The rain from the night before had dried, but the smell of freshness still floated around. I took a deep breath and started walking toward the office. The streets were busier now, cars, bicycles, and people moving in every direction. But inside me, I still carried that soft cafe peace. Every step felt lighter. I thought about the people I had seen there. The man with his newspaper, the two friends, the barista, the girl drawing. Each of them had their own morning, their own quiet story. And somehow we all shared the same space for a short time. It felt beautiful to me. Like life's little connection we often don't notice. As I crossed the street, I looked at the reflection of the sky in a puddle. The clouds were moving slowly and a bit of blue appeared between them. It made me think how mornings are like beginnings, soft, fragile, full of hope. No matter what kind of day waits ahead, that small piece of peace in the morning can change everything. I passed a flower shop and the smell of roses and jasmine mixed with the cool air. I stopped for a second just to look at the colors, soft pinks, deep reds, white lilies. The owner was arranging flowers in a vase, humming a song quietly. That small moment, the scent, the song, the colors, felt like another piece of the same calm morning. When I finally reached the office building, I looked up at the tall glass walls. They reflected the sky, the trees, and even a small part of the cafe sign from across the street. I smiled to myself. Maybe I would come back again tomorrow, or maybe even this afternoon for another coffee. There was something special about that place, something I didn't want to lose. Inside the elevator, I saw my reflection in the mirror. I looked relaxed, maybe even happy. It was nice to see that, to realize how small things could change the way we feel. Sometimes happiness doesn't come from big moments. It comes from mornings like this, from the smell of coffee, from sunlight on your hands, from a song that plays quietly in the background. I stepped into the office, said good morning to my coworkers, and sat at my desk. The day had started for real now. Emails, calls, plans. But as I opened my computer, I could still taste the coffee, still feel the calm from the cafe. And that was enough. The rest of the day passed quickly. But every time I closed my eyes for a second, I could see the little cafe again. The golden light, the sound of the bell, the smell of coffee. It stayed with me like a soft echo of the morning. That evening when I walked home, I passed by the cafe again. It was already getting dark, but the lights inside were warm and soft. People were still there, talking, laughing, drinking coffee. It looked like a small island of light in the middle of the city. I stopped for a moment and smiled. There was something comforting about seeing that. Like the day had come full circle. I didn't go inside this time. I just watched from the street for a few seconds and then continued my walk home. The night air was cool, and the city lights reflected on the wet pavement. Everything looked calm, almost like a painting. And I thought again about that first sip of coffee in the morning. How something so small could make the whole day feel brighter. When I reached home, I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window. The sky was dark now, but the memory of the morning was still warm in my heart. I opened my notebook again and wrote a few lines. The Morning Café is not just a place. It is a small world where time slows down, where life smells like coffee and fresh bread, and where strangers share quiet happiness without even knowing it. Then I closed the notebook and smiled. Outside, the city lights were shining softly. Inside, everything was peaceful, and I thought, tomorrow will begin again, with another morning, another cup of coffee, another story waiting to happen.